Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the United Service Institution Strategic Dialogues, your one-stop shop for national defense and geopolitics. Today, we will be covering the dynamics of Kashmir imbroglio, and for that, we have with us Lieutenant General Satish Dua, who has been conferred with the Param Vishisht Seva Medal, the Uttam Yudh Seva Medal, Sena Medal, Vishisht Seva Medal, and then retired as the Chief of Integrated Defense Staff. He is a counter-terrorism specialist who was the corps commander in Kashmir when the surgical strikes were executed in response to the terror attacks in Uri. He has commanded his battalion as well as a brigade in active militancy areas in Jammu and Kashmir on the line of control. As a Major General, he raised and commanded a new counter-terrorism division of the Assam Rifles to coordinate operations in the 3 states of the Northeast. General Dua has also co-chaired the Indo-US Military Cooperation Group and steered the construction of the National War Memorial. He writes and speaks on current and strategic affairs and is also an executive member of the USI Council. He has authored a book about the soldiers' lives on the LOC titled India's Brave Hearts, and his second book, A General Reminisces, Life Under Fire in Kashmir, is being released soon. The general is from the Jammu and Kashmir Light Infantry Regiment and has commanded the 15 Corps, which is situated in Kashmir. Hence, he has a deep understanding of the dynamics in Jammu and Kashmir. So, without further ado, let's get into it.
Thank you, Vinayak, for inviting me for this interview.
You're welcome, sir. The militancy in Kashmir has seen many ups and downs. In the late 80s, we saw with the come up of the Jammu and Kashmir Liberation Front, the exodus happens, after which there was a significant increase in terrorist activities in the region. As of now, post the abrogation of Article 370, the insurgency has effectively ended, but the acts of terrorism continue to plague the region. So, my question to you would be, during your long experience in Jammu and Kashmir, please take us through the evolution of the terrorism in the region.
Right. That's a very good question, Vinayak. As you rightly brought out, that it was in the late 80s that in the militancy movement started in Kashmir. In fact, the 1987 elections were widely alleged to be rigged elections, and that provided impetus to a already a simmering discontent or undercurrents that were there in Kashmir. So, militancy in its full form started. Pakistan capitalized on it in late 80s, and they started supporting JKLF as a group that you mentioned, but they started supporting more and more terrorist organizations besides JKLF also to foment trouble in India, in Jammu and Kashmir. Let's also remember that exactly at that time, the Soviets had withdrawn from Afghanistan, where Pakistan was heavily involved with the terrorists. Those terrorists were left without a cause, and they were creating havoc in Pakistan. So it was a good opportunity also for Pakistan to infiltrate those terrorists through the LOC into Jammu and Kashmir to create havoc and violence over here. As we started combating infiltration and terrorism, initially there was a lot of bloodshed, there was a lot of violence, and the army also evolved. We raised Rashtriya Rifles in 1990. We inducted more battalions and more troops in Jammu and Kashmir. And by mid-90s, we had brought the situation to such a control that the terrorists sponsored by Pakistan found it very difficult to operate in Kashmir Valley, or even more difficult to infiltrate through the Kashmir borders, the LOC at Kashmir. So they shifted the tactics. They moved to the south of Pir Panjal, the Jammu region as it is called.
Yes, sir.
And it is the same state, J&K, but south of Pir Panjal. And in mid to late 90s, then the infiltration started taking place through south of Pir Panjal, the Poonch Rajouri region, which also had a line of control just like the northern regions. In fact, I was a commanding officer in Poonch at the LOC from 98 to 2001, and we used to have very, very frequent encounters with terrorists on the line of control and in the hinterland. This can be judged by the fact that in 2001 was perhaps the peak year where more than 2,100 terrorists were eliminated in the whole state. Moving on, things further improved in 2003.
Yes, sir.
In 2003, a ceasefire was called for. I am not deliberately not covering the Kargil war that happened in 99 because I am only going through the militancy story and the terrorism angle. But otherwise, the Kargil war in 99 and the dynamics, the interplay that it had with the valley, because troops had to be rushed in towards Kargil. And thereafter, we raised another corps in the Leh region, in Ladakh. That acquired its own dynamics. But coming back to 2003, in 2003, a ceasefire was declared. We were trying to, use our diplomatic instrument of war, and a ceasefire was declared between India and Pakistan on the LOC. This allowed us to construct what is known as the LC fence.
Yes.
It is anti-infiltration obstacle system, colloquially called as the LC fence. Initially, there were many who were skeptic of this. We thought, how can you have an obstacle which is not manned throughout, that won't be very effective. We had many examples in the history, whether it is the Great Wall of China or the Bar-Lev line and Maginot line, etc. Even I was skeptical of it. But I am very happy to be proven wrong. Eventually, this LC fence became a game changer. It brought down the infiltration drastically.
Yes, sir.
And today, and it evolved into something much better, because today the LC fence has not only a very effective fence system, which is not a single fence, it's a double layered and a very intricate system, but it also has, there is lighting on the fence, it is lit up at night, there are different kinds of sensors which give you a warning when the fence is breached. So it has actually channelized the terrorists, if they attempt, to killing grounds.
Yes, sir.
Then we saw in the first decade of this century, towards the end of the first decade, we saw a different dynamic. The the Amarnath Yatra of 2008 led to some communal tensions, and there were riots in the state on a issue of transfer of land to the Amarnath Trust. Thereafter, we saw the militancy was sort of going down in terms of terrorists and the violence, and the militants, the terrorists, they then adopted another strategy. Inspired by the 2006, the second Palestinian Intifada of 2006, in where the Palestinians actually used stone pelting very effectively as a form of protesting against Israel. So we saw in the year of 2009, 10, 11, we saw very active stone pelting being practiced in the Kashmir Valley. It was mainly restricted to the highways. It was almost like a 9-to-5 venture. The boys would come down from the villages. They would do stone pelting. Stones were placed on the road by those who incited and organized.
Yes, sir.
And we actually saw this happening on a daily basis.
So a highly organized venture.
Very organized, because sir, to find so many stones at one place is not possible.
Not possible.
So stones were actually placed. It was really refined as a process.
Yes, sir.
The army is not used to this stone pelting issue, because we have only lethal weapons. We shoot to kill. But this was largely handled by the police and the Central Armed Police Forces, mainly the CRPF. Then came another change.
Yes, sir.
we used to see in protests, during protests or after Friday prayers, if there were protests or stone pelting, we would see the young boys would cover their face with a black cloth or use a green cloth in solidarity with Pakistan, so that they would not be recognized and picked up by the police. In 2015, when I took over as Corps Commander, by then there was a new twist. They started using the power of social media. How? Just before I took over, a month or so before that, 10 young Kashmiri terrorists, led by Burhan Wani, the HM leader, the Hizbul Mujahideen leader, they posted their photograph, a group photograph with AK-47s on the Facebook. So, gone were the days of covering their face. They were posting it on social media.
Yes, sir.
They were inspiring the Kashmiri youth to join militancy.
Be brazen about it.
And be open about it. So when you post a picture on a Facebook, that means you are now everyone knows where you live.
Yes, sir.
They know your families. So the whole thing was changing. Earlier, it was hide your face and do something so that your family is safe. Run away, the family is not put into trouble.
Yes.
But here was this twist. This was inspired, to my mind, the use of social media was inspired by the Arab Spring, the various revolutions, starting with the Tunisian revolution, the things that we saw in the Arab world.
Yes, sir.
And 2011 onwards.
11, yes, sir.
Yes. So when that started, so they were inspired by this. Social media was used not only for making a statement, which I gave you an example of Burhan Wani and his band, but all social media was also used to radicalize the youth. Very good narratives were created from their side, from the other side, by their handlers in Pakistan, by ISI, and peddled across the social media. Social media was also used to mobilize the youth. After all, how do you mobilize them?
Yes.
So, social media was used, WhatsApps were used very successfully to mobilize the youth for stone pelting, mobilize the youth for bands, for hartals. And it was used to mobilize a lot of crowds for funerals of slain militants, slain terrorists. So, we saw this distinct shift coming in with the use of social media. Then, in 2016, Burhan Wani was eliminated. We saw the valley burned for next 3 or 4 months. I was a corps commander then. Then we had the surgical strikes in response to the terror attack by suicide terrorists at our camp at Uri. However, it was 2019 which again brought about a very distinct shift. After the Article 370 was abrogated, diluted actually, the state was then governed as a union. It was divided into 2 union territories, and then it was governed through the center, by the center, having appointed a lieutenant governor there. Thus, there was no political interference. And as we have seen over the last few years, ever since 2019, the situation is far more peaceful. There is no violence on the streets. Stone pelting incidents are almost not there. Schools are not interrupted. There are no bands, no hartals. Earlier, Hurriyat used to issue a calendar where virtually every day commemorated something, and even the tourists were unable to go into a shopping mode in Srinagar. Over the last 5 years, ever since it has become a union territory, a lot of funds have been injected. Funds were injected earlier also from the center, but earlier they did not pay dividends. They did not reach the common man. The schemes did not fructify. So now we have, it has been translated into very good administrative measures. For the first time, we have a 3-tier panchayat. So while the democratic process is still to take place at a state level, but in the last 5 years, we have the panchayat has been elected.
Yes, sir.
The block development officer has been elected. The district development council has been formed. So at the grassroots level, people are involved in development of Kashmir. There are several educational institutions. I don't want to go into details, but whether it is AIMS or IIMs and medical colleges, engineering colleges, we have more than 50 such colleges and universities that are coming up, and more than 25 to 50,000 students will benefit by it as and when all are completed. Some of them are still work in progress.
Yes, sir.
As far as electrification and water is concerned, electrification is 100%. Potable water is more than the national average. I think it's about 53 or 54%. A lot of inflow of FDI and investment is coming in from other countries as well, mainly the Gulf countries.
Yes, sir.
So as all these infrastructure fructifies, the Kashmiri youth have started to see the fruits of development. The infrastructure of roads, bridges, tunnels has gone on to a next level in whole of J&K. So with all this happening, what has happened is that the terrorists are on a back foot, and the handlers across from Pakistan are concerned that this feeling of normalcy that is coming in, it should not lull everyone into complacency. This year, this summer, the tourist figure have crossed more than 2 crores.
Yes, sir.
Unheard of in Kashmir. So, off and on, you see, they also have changed their tactics. How have they changed their tactics? They have started off by targeted killings, picking up soft targets, using hybrid terrorists. What are soft targets? Let me explain these terms.
Yes, sir.
You heard often that immigrant labor that is working in Kashmir has been targeted. No, those are soft targets. You go and target a chemist at a shop.
Soft target.
Soft targets, So also the hybrid terrorists, the word I used, hybrid terrorists. What is hybrid terrorism? They are not able to train terrorists in terrorist camps anymore. While the trained manpower is not there for terrorist groups, but what is also a fact that if to fire a pistol or to lob a grenade, not very great training is required. You can always do it through internet and learn these things. And that's what is happening as the shooting of these soft targets. There is whom we call a terrorist, comes and knocks off a person, a soft target, throws that pistol away and merges back into the society. He will not commit another act of terror. So he will not come on the radar at all. Unlike those terrorists, 70 to 80 is the number or residual terrorists now still in J&K. Unlike those terrorists who move with AKs, they stay in hideouts.
Like Burhan Wani.
Yes, they are the proper terrorists who have been there.
The ones who are open about it.
Hybrid terrorists, on the other hand, are the boy next door.
Yes, sir.
Who is radicalized, who is ready to take this risk, pick up a soft target, but it sends the similar kind of message that all is not well. They want to instill fear in the minds of people.
Yes.
And this is the new tactics. I'm saying that from the point of tactics. Another new trend that we have seen in the recent past is that now that Kashmir Valley, the infiltration grid is very tightly sewn. The hinterland deployment is very robust. So they have again shifted the focus to south of Pir Panjal. Poonch Rajouri area has been activated. We have terrorists moving towards Riasi. Both in Rajouri, we had targeted killings of one particular community. In Riasi, actually, pilgrims of another community were targeted.
Yes, sir.
Similarly, they have activated places like Kathua, which is down south in Jammu and Kashmir. Areas like Doda have been activated. So, they are trying to shift their tactics again. Similarly, new organizations have come up, the Resistance Front, etc. They are all new names for the old terrorist organization, because Pakistan is under pressure by the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, to show that it is serious towards curbing terror. So they have changed the names of the organization. And these organizations, taking a leaf from the ISIS, are maintaining a better presence on or are making better use of the internet. So, to my mind, this has been the evolution of militancy and terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir.
Yes, sir.
Similarly, the army, the security apparatus has also evolved. In nutshell, we also raised Rashtriya Rifles starting from 1990 and 3 different tranches. Now Rashtriya Rifles is over 66,000 troops, and it is the largest counter-terrorism force in the world. Then we have made some bold experiments. In early 90s, we started an experiment with surrender terrorists called Ikhwan.
Yes, sir.
For 9 years, Ikhwan paid us good dividends. And in fact, the 1996 elections, the state elections, were held primarily because of the efforts of Ikhwan. Ikhwan operated with the army and the Rashtriya Rifles and the police, etc.
So explain a bit about Ikhwan.
So Ikhwan was surrender terrorists.
Yes, sir.
Of different reasons, but mainly they were from a militant group called JKSLF, Jammu and Kashmir Student Liberation Front. However, like I said, they were from other groups also. Now, they, having been terrorists, they have been across to the terrorist camps. They have taken training in Pakistan. Some I've interviewed for my second book. I've written a lot about this in my second book that you mentioned this.
Yes, sir. A general reminiscence.
A general reminiscence, Life Under Fire in Kashmir. So, Ikhwan, then the surrender terrorists, when they realized that futility of it and they realized that Pakistan is actually making use of them, is actually just using them for their own ends. So those who were disillusioned, they came overboard and they started helping the army, police and security forces.
As informants?
As informants, yes, because they could generate very good intelligence.
Yes, sir.
Also, as guides, they would walk along with them. They knew the tactics that the terrorists employ. So they would equally be guide and participate in that operation. So they yielded very good dividends. But this was an ad hoc sort of a measure. So after nearly a decade, it started to lose steam. Then in 1996 election, Kukka Perry, who was their leader of the Ikhwan, he himself won an election. He became the MLA from Madhepura. So, and there were several others, Sheikh Tahir and all, who were in the south. So, then we tried a bolder experiment. And in that, we, that is the we in the state, the country, we wound up Ikhwan and raised a territorial army battalion of my regiment, Jammu and Kashmir Light Infantry, a home and hut battalion, which took sons of the soil. So we raised 2 such battalions, but one of them was comprised of ex-Ikhwanis, ex-surrendered militants, surrendered terrorists only.
Yes, sir.
So that was a very unique experiment anywhere in the world. We raised an army unit out of surrendered terrorists. It was not like the Contra rebels and all. This is something very different. Again, all this is a story that I have documented in my second book, which will be released soon, because that's from my regiment.
Yes, sir.
And I talk about also the Buran, I beg your pardon, last like Nazir Wani's story, because he's the central protagonist in my book. Nazir Wani is one of the ex-Ikhwani, ex-territorial army battalion, who is the only Kashmiri to have won the highest gallantry award in peacetime, the Ashok Chakra, posthumously. Yes, and he is Ashok Chakra and 2 Sena medals, a very brave fellow, a brave soldier. So this is how Indian Army also responded, by thickening up, by sending more troops, by raising Rashtriya Rifles, by raising Ikhwans, by raising the territorial army battalions, by creating the SWENs, by using what we did about media and social media as a subject of a separate discussion. We'll talk about that. So this has been the evolution of terrorism and counter-terrorism, to my mind, in Jammu and Kashmir.
So, as you know, this is the day and age of social media. Almost everyone is busy scrolling through social media these days. And during my previous question, you also mentioned how the militants, they use social media to their benefit. So could you expand on the role that is played by social media and your legacy media in the terrorism and the counter-terrorism operations?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, Vinayak, when you say that social media or even mainstream media is very important. In fact, I will go further to say that one of the most dramatic developments of contemporary warfare is the emergence of media and social media as a very powerful instrument of war.
Yes, sir.
Today, it is important to win over the enemy in combat, but it is equally important to carry the public opinion, whether it's domestic or international. It is very important to carry that opinion. And how do you carry the opinion? You carry the opinion by media. What do you know about Gaza? What do you know about Ukraine? You know only what the media feeds us.
Yes, sir.
When we started, when the Russia-Ukraine war started, for a very long time, and even now to a great degree, we know only what the Western media tells us.
Yes, sir.
So the Russian narrative is subdued for obvious reasons. So what I'm trying to get at is when you see these protests against Israeli attacks in Gaza, so many civilians being killed, women and children being killed, it is a very powerful medium. And all this is happening only because of the social media.
Yes, sir.
In the Reactive attack, which was the picture that was shown more often?
So the little child, that 4-year-old.
Exactly. Couple of years ago in Turkey, when one ship was sunk, they showed a small child lying on the beach, 2-year-old child dead, and a very innocent face.
Yes, sir.
Why? Why are we showing the child? It compels you to take notice.
A very powerful image.
Absolutely. That powerful image in the early 70s in Vietnam, there is a very famous picture on the Time cover. 8-year-old Vietnamese girl running naked after a napalm bomb attack because the clothes get burnt up.
Yes, sir.
So she was running naked, and that picture turned the tide of war, and the Vietnamese finally won. So, many such examples abound. The fact of the matter is, social media and media are here to stay, and we have to learn to deal with them. To my mind, the terrorists are making good use of social media. In the middle of last decade, the counter-terrorism grade was very strong, so they could not exfiltrate to the training camps to go and train militants, which used to happen earlier.
Yes, sir.
Also, the number of residual militants in the Jammu and Kashmir Valley was coming down because of the regular, relentless counter-terrorist operations. And that is where the terrorist organizations changed track, voted by their handlers across, who craft the strategies.
Yes.
That they started using social media. Like I told you, inspired by the Arab Spring.
Yes, sir.
They started using social media. What is ISIS? ISIS uses social media and internet very prolific. They rely on that. So the terrorist organization started, and I gave you the example of Burhan Wani, how he and his gang put their photos with weapons on the Facebook. That was a very brazen attempt.
Yes, sir.
Social media being used for mobilization, I mentioned to you, mobilization of masses.
Yes, sir.
For occasions, for funerals of terrorists, for stone pelting, for buns, hartals, etc. It was very effective.
Yes, sir.
It was also used for radicalization. You radicalize the minds of people. The youth. We are contesting for that mind space of the youth. And social media is a very powerful medium. Those who are crafting their strategies, the narratives, they build such narratives. So many of them are based on fake news. They pick up some video from somewhere.
Yes, sir.
So many times it is not even Indian. Now the fact checks say, not even Kashmir, not even here. But then they will say these are the kind of atrocities that are happening in Kashmir.
Yes, sir.
And the youth will lap it up. Because firstly, they have no access to any other information in the remote areas. But
Yes.
ever since 2006 or 7 somewhere, when mobile phones were allowed in Jammu and Kashmir, the youth started using that mobile phone very well. The permeability of mobile internet in Jammu and Kashmir, because of its remoteness,
Yes.
is far more than anywhere else in India. So, there the youth see this, whether it's to see a movie or whether get radicalized or Zakir Naik speech or anything, all those kind of hate speeches, everything comes on social media.
Yes, sir.
So I dare say, to my mind, it is serving them well. What are we doing about it? I think the state response, while we are also using social media,
Yes.
but I think to my mind, I would have to put it bluntly that the state response is not as good.
Yes, sir.
We need to improve our state response. Maybe the issue is that there are too many agencies involved. Who will take the lead? Or everyone is doing something on their own. Army does something, the police does something, the intelligence agencies do something, but there is no coordination. Whereas as far as the terrorists are concerned, or their handlers across are concerned, or the hate speeches are concerned, they are all being guided
Yes, sir.
very craftily by the deep state, by the ISI.
Yes, sir. So it's a very deliberate and
Deliberate. They don't
Yes,
have
sir.
to seek permissions. We get caught up in our own hierarchies and permissions and all
Yes.
that, and then we are not able to push out a narrative. Second disadvantage we have, the terrorist organizations are very clearly using fake news,
yes, sir.
fake video clips. And today with the AI stepping in, it's very easy to make fake news, fake videos.
Yes, sir.
The voiceovers, voice of the person, it's all so simple. So they are using it. Whereas state, when I say state, I mean the government and government agencies, including the army, all of us, we can't make fake news.
Yes, sir.
Our narrative has to be based on credible information.
Yes, sir.
But there are ways of doing it. While basing the narrative on credible information, our narrative has to be credible, we can still make a very nice national narrative. And we need to do that.
Yes.
Because if we leave that space vacant,
It's going to be filled by someone.
it is going to be filled by someone. And it will be filled by someone with hate, with
Yes.
inimical interest. It has to be the other side. So we need to hire professionals perhaps. You can't just leave it to agencies and the security forces and the government departments doing it. It cannot be done. It's a very specialized field.
Yes, sir.
We need to, in my view, I'll stick my neck out to say that like we created after Ikhwan, the Territorial Army Battalion of Surrendered Terrorists, we perhaps need to do that for social media.
Yes, sir.
Territorial Army Battalion is a model that is available for if you want a little departure from the normal organization.
Yes, sir.
So we have to think of imaginative ways of doing it. We need to create a sort of army or social media warriors, I would say. You can rope in many interest groups. What we are doing in the army today of banning social media, we will not have Twitter accounts, banning the officers and soldiers from this, I don't think is the right step. We need
Yes,
to
sir.
utilize and exploit the social media. We can create social media warriors by harnessing their power. We have a very large armed forces army. We have the Fauji brats. Their children are very fired up.
Yes.
We have many such interest groups who will actually bat for us. We need to harness, think of imaginative ways, bring in professionals and harness the power of social media. Make a credible national narrative based on truth. If we don't, at the expense of reputation, that space will be filled up by the other side with hatred, and then we will lose this mind space of the youth. That is our objective.
Yes. So one thing that I've noticed is that the Indian response is always reactive in terms of anything which is prevalent on social media, especially.
True. So that's exactly what I'm
Yes,
talking against. If somebody makes a news, a false allegation by creating a deep fake or a AI generated thing, your rebuttal does not carry that many views.
Yes, sir.
If actually you manage to, even if it's the government department, you manage a rebuttal, it comes somewhere in a small clip in the small news item in page 5 which no one reads. So we have to understand it is a first mover's advantage.
Yes.
Social media, you have to be very agile and nimble to be able to use it. So our narrative, like you rightly said, can't be reactive. We need to put out our own narratives, and our narratives have to be done little more intelligently
Yes, sir.
than the efforts that are being made by us now.
So what you're essentially arguing for is a more proactive approach to get ahead of the curve?
Proactive is one thing, but I want a more intelligent approach, a little smarter approach. And for that, I think, when they say wars are too serious a business to be left to generals, similarly, I would say social media certainly is too serious a business to be left to us alone.
Yes.
We need to involve the professionals, take their advice and go by their advice.
Yes, sir. So one thing that comes to mind is that some time ago, an Indian cricketer was accused of being, a Sikh cricketer was accused of being a Khalistani.
Yeah.
So by the time the government's response came, the official stance came on it.
Yeah.
And it was found that those handles on Instagram were actually being operated from Pakistan.
Yes.
By the time the rebuttal came, the message had already percolated in the minds of people. And even to this day, some people I come across on social media who are making this claim.
Exactly. So, like you rightly said,
Yes, sir.
once a narrative has been put out, for you to subdue the narrative or mollify the narrative, it takes a lot of doing. So it is better that we go proactive and create our own national narratives. I've been repeating.
Yes. One thing that I'd like to clarify here is that General Dua just used the word Fauji brat. There's a colloquial term used in the armed forces, which stands for born, raised and transferred. Sir, you have clearly talked about fighting militants and fighting the armed forces of other nations. So, sir, what are your views on fighting the two? As in, what is the difference? How the army has to operate when it comes to, say, we fought in Kargil, we were fighting the Pakistani army regulars, and of late in Kashmir, we are fighting the militants. So, what is the difference between the two?
Right. That's a good question. I would like, especially our younger officers, to understand that. I'm sure they do. But let me just put everyone on the same page. When you fight an enemy,
Yes, sir.
you fight an enemy to defend the sovereignty of the country. That is a fight, a combat that takes place on the borders.
Yes, sir.
There you fight till the last man, last round. In fact, that is our slogan.
Yes, sir.
Fight till the last man, last round. That's the catchphrase.
Yes, sir.
In Rezangla, 120 plus soldiers perished. Till the last man, last round. Their bodies were found later,
Yes,
when the winters were over.
Major Shaitan Singh.
Major Shaitan Singh got Paramveer Chakra and so many other awards. That happened at Rezangla. So that is called Saragadi. Those are the kind of stories that we've heard of fighting last man, last round. They happen only at the borders
Yes, sir.
when you're fighting the enemy. Coming to terrorism. Terrorism is not that fighting to last man, last round kind of pitched battle. You have to fight smart. I would often say that we can let a terrorist go. I don't, 50 of these terrorists are not worth one casualty of one soldier.
Okay, sir.
Because I would often say, if a terrorist gets away from the encounter,
Yes, sir.
he has a certain shelf life. If not today, then tomorrow he'll be killed.
Yes.
If not here, then there. If not by this unit, by some other unit. He has a shelf life. We don't want to incur, I would not want to incur any casualties to our soldiers in trying to eliminate terrorists. That is not to say that that casualties don't take place among soldiers. It happens. It is combat. But let me give you an example. There have been cases, when I was the corps commander, I distinctly recall a case where the mobs came in and they tried to help the terrorists who were holed up in a group of houses.
Yes, sir.
It became a very messy situation. The terrorists got away. They helped terrorists escape. But we decided not to fire on the mobs. That collateral damage is not worth it. The kind of, the hue and cry that would come or follow in the human rights aspect would be huge. And in any case, we don't want to kill our civilians even if they are trying to help the terrorists. So my point is, that is the essential difference, where you dig your heels and fight till you die.
Yes, sir.
But here, you fight smart as far as terrorists are concerned.
Yes, sir.
So that is the essential difference.
All right, sir. So, sir, would it be safe to say that fighting terrorists is much harder than fighting the armed forces of other nations?
Absolutely. Firstly, you don't know who's a terrorist.
Yes, sir.
There is an enemy with a different uniform.
Yes, sir.
If it comes to the borders with China,
yes, sir,
as in 62 war,
yes,
and a couple of other incidents in
well, one comes to mind.
Their features are very different. You can recognize. With Pakistan, it's an enemy. So it's very different.
Yes, sir.
Whereas here, we don't know who's a terrorist.
Yes, sir.
Especially when we talk about hybrid terrorists, he's one amongst you.
Yes, sir.
One amongst the village. Also, there is a very high risk of collateral damage over here. So this is a very different ball game. Your intelligence acquisition, how do you acquire intelligence for them? Fighting terrorism or counter-terrorism is, you have to get into his mind.
Yes, sir.
You have to decide or get into the terrorist mind to see how he will plan and think ahead. If he's infiltrated, if a group has infiltrated from the LOC at a certain point, as a commanding officer, when I was blocking that in Punch at the LOC, we would have to see if this group has actually gone past. Will he cross the river, Mandi River, in the first night, or will he take shelter and risk being caught here? If he crosses the river, then he risks getting daylighted. So you have to get into the mind of terrorists.
Yes, sir.
And plan accordingly. I would end this by saying counter-terrorism is like playing chess with live bullets.
So you just talked about the difference in approaches to terrorism in the armed forces of other nations. So, sir, how does the leadership style of the officers and the junior commissioned officers differ in the two cases?
Counter-terrorism is essentially a company commander's battle.
Yes, sir.
Let me contrast that with wars. In wars, strategies are made at very high levels. It will be operational level of a corps that will launch either infantry attacks or combat commands. So it's a very, battle has to be coordinated across a very wide front. Many different arms and services have to get involved for that combat punch. Whereas coming down to terrorism, like I said, it is a company commander's battle.
Yes, sir.
Essentially. At the most, it will go to a battalion commander's level, where he might have to coordinate between more than one companies. Larger than that, operations in counter-terrorism have occurred as exceptions. We've had Sarp Vinash in the year in 2000s, that decade. We've had Operation All Out when I was Corps Commander in Kashmir. But those are exceptions.
Yes, sir.
Essentially, like I said earlier, in counter-terrorism, the company commander has to plan his operations. He generates intelligence. He gets some intelligence from higher headquarters, from the battalion headquarters, from brigade headquarters, from intelligence agencies. But he generates his own intelligence by keeping in touch with the ground, with the contacts, with the sources.
Yes, sir.
Then he has to, when he gets information which is actionable, he launches operations. He informs the battalion. So, and if need be, he requires more help from the battalion.
Yes,
That is where the difference ends between how to execute. I like to end by saying, so what does it entail? It also entails a different style of leadership.
Yes, sir.
You have to give operational freedom to your subordinate commanders at every level. The commanding officer has to give operational freedom to the company commanders.
Yes, sir.
But more than that, as you go at higher levels, you require to give operational freedom to commanders under you. For instance, when I was a corps commander, I used to tell the GOCs, I will give you worrying amount of operational freedom. I mean, I actually use this phrase. You can ask officers who commanded under me. Because there is no place for micromanagement. It is, at the end of the day, a battalion, a company commander's operation. So what can the leaders do?
Yes, sir.
Leaders can provide guidance based on their own experience in earlier years, which is what one did. You can give decisions in time.
Yes, sir.
And have shoulders broad enough to ensure that any pressure from top is not passed down at the lower level to your subordinates. Let them carry out operations with operational freedom. And last sentence, what should the subordinates then do? Because here it's different.
Yes, sir.
In war, you will execute the plan that has been told to you. HR is at so-and-so time. You will attack from this side. This will be the flanking move, etc. Everything.
Yes, sir.
Whereas when it comes to here, the operations have to be carried out by every subordinate commander in that grey zone. So you have to have a lot of tolerance for ambiguity. You will not get orders for everything. You have to seize initiative. And when you get into some difficulty, take guidance and orders from the top.
So you're talking from the point of view of young officers?
Not only young officers,
Yes, sir.
everyone.
Okay, sir.
If I'm a formation commander,
Yes, sir.
if there is an opportunity, let me take my initiative and seize that opportunity and make it happen.
Yes, sir.
So these are the kind of differences that make or that occur between war fighting with the enemy and combating a terrorist.
Yes, sir. So what you have just elucidated here, is this based on the idea that the commander on the ground knows more than the commander in the back?
Yes, I said you're right. I said so. It is his battle. He gets intelligence. He has to execute the operation. So he knows. In fact, information flows from him upwards.
Yes, sir.
You may have some electronic intelligence and you may pass it down. You may have some satellite intelligence and you may pass it down.
Yes.
But eventually he has to plan and conduct his operation.
Yes, sir. All right. All right, sir. I think that covers almost everything that we had planned to. Thank you so much for enlightening us about the situation in Kashmir.
Thank you, Vinayak. Thank you for having me on this interview.